Hello! Today I'm continuing to work on my first 2D tile set. This will be designed to work with platformer games and feature a host of biomes and plant life for any game designer to curate to their project. I'm working with Aesprite, and today I'm specifically covering how I made the trees and plant life for my Grasslands biome. Art in general is new to me, so I end up struggling quite a bit here before I made something I'm proud of. So I hope you enjoy watching me learn, and maybe learn something yourself. I start this process with an idea to make a pine or fir tree first. I started with a darker core color and darker greens to illustrate the deep green color of pine or fir trees, and used a lighter shade to illustrate where the light can reach. I decided I wanted elements of the tree trunk to peek through the branches and needles. of the tree, and so left some of the darker core in the center of the green. I decided I wanted a few more accent colors and started adding some smaller detail to the outside. I didn't know it at the time, but this extra detail was actually the start of my problems with the trees. I did some additional detailing and shaping before setting it aside as a finished tree. Now, I want to pause here a moment and explain the issue. If we examine this tree and compare it to the grass beneath it, the problem starts to become more obvious. My grass has features and complexity, but follows a simple pattern and shape. The lightest green color does not extend further than 2 pixels into the next shade. The next shade has very few thin features, and even those only extend to the next shade by another 2 pixels. This is repeated by the next color. Finally, all the colors have a generalized shape to them. Squares or rectangles, really. When we compare to the tree, we have a trunk which starts with 2 colors and no variation, and quickly becomes these very small 1 pixel wide features that snake through the tree. The green also follows this pattern, with many small 1 pixel wide features snaking through the various green shades. The problem, in essence, is visual noise. Though my tree has only 3 greens and 2 browns, compared to the 4 different shades of greens in my grass, the green branches are visually more complex than the grass, and the trunk is incredibly stale when compared to the grass. At this point in my process, I recognize that something isn't quite working for this tree, but I'm not realizing this exact issue. I actually think this tree could work in a different style of tile set, as the colors are nice and the overall design is pleasant to look at. Because of this, I'm struggling to realize the issue in the moment, so I put it on hold and continue with some small berry bushes. I really like how these turned out, and unsurprisingly, their visual noise matches more closely to the grasslands they sit on. I end up making both a picked and unpicked berry bush to give game developers that option. Now I decide to make a new type of tree, this one loosely inspired by oak or maple trees. I wanted a couple of main branches that make rounded domes of leaves which can be used to show depth in the tree. Now, I'm not joking, I spent 3 days working on these oak trees. The issue I highlighted earlier with the pine tree really starts to show itself, but since I didn't solve it earlier, I'm still struggling to figure out why it isn't working. I initially tried to show the tree branches peeking through the canopy. didn't like how this was turning out, so I restarted and tried a couple of tools within Aesprite to get high levels of detail into the tree canopy. That didn't really work either. So then I tried to show how the tree branches were shaping the canopy. I tried both showing the branches poking through the green, and then I tried to show depth in the canopy by highlighting the top edge of the canopies. Highlighting was actually a good move. I liked the sense of depth I was getting in this process. To build on this depth, I shifted my color palette to a lighter shade of green to give me more colors to work with when dealing with the shadows. I ended up with something that looks like a green toupee on a stick. Not my best work, but I was still struggling to understand how to fix it. For the next 2 days, I alternated my work between different plants and trees. I made a few flowers and grasses, and came up with a better looking pine tree that still showed the layering elements that are common in pine and fir trees. I also attempted different variations of the oak tree, getting closer to the smaller levels of detail I needed without fully understanding the problem. It's encouraging to see going back through this footage that every variation was getting closer and closer to something that I'd like. Finally, on day 3, I sat down to try once more. I decided to bring my scope down as small as possible and make the smallest oak tree variant I had tried at that point. I made the same highlighted outlines and color grading as I had before, and it was here in this small setting I started to realize the visual noise and clash of details this patterning demanded. My lighting stopped making sense. I had inconsistent shadows, and some spots seemed to demand both light and dark color greens. I tried to imply shading with a pattern, but I also didn't like that look. However, in this step, I realized the simple line between the two green shades actually looked nice, so I tried to expand on this. And here is where I see the light at the end of the tunnel. A simple pattern of colors to show shading combined with basic level of detail provided a canopy that actually looked good. Finally, after 3 days, I'd figured it out. I quickly began applying it everywhere, and I even realized I could add some visual complexity in 1 pixel wide shapes to imply an inconsistent depth on the surface of the canopy. I took advantage of my breakthrough and applied a similar shading scheme to the trunk, and then as a final test, applied this pattern to the larger trees I'd attempted earlier that gave me so much trouble, hoping that this shading would work for them as well. And well, this is the result. I'm incredibly proud of this Grasslands biome. This is something I could actually see being in a simple platformer, and it is kind of the first time I realized that this project can be what I want it to be. I hope you enjoyed watching my learning process, and if I can leave you with anything as you pursue your own art, I'd like to encourage you to continue even when it isn't working, as eventually you'll solve the problem. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you all the best.